to this month's Zoomers to Boomers. This roundtable will be centered around the transgender experience, transgender generational experience. And before we get started, I think Nadia will just go over some of the ground rules for Zoomers to Boomers. Just want to emphasize that Zoomers to Boomers is supposed to be a safe, inclusive space for different generations to get together and talk about controversial issues. As long as don't think any opinion you hold is wrong, as long as you express it respectfully and you're aware of other people's feelings, then it'll be okay. And just one advice, please try to respond to what each other are saying. Let's try not to go on monologues. Let's try to have a little bit more dialogue. And on top of that, try not to monopolize time. But of course, if you feel like you need to continue talking, feel free to. And Nadia, you could tell them some of the rules.
Our rules are honestly pretty reasonable and common sense, just please listen to what others want to say. Obviously be respectful of their opinions and their experiences. Try to relate to them other than, attack them, because we don't tolerate that. And yeah, honestly, just try to speak your mind, but also give other people an opportunity to speak their own. Yes, because we're all trying to, share our own experiences, opinions here, instead of just one person leading the conversation. But yes, thanks so much again for being here. Omar, if you'd like to add anything to that.
Yeah, no, everything Nadia said. And to get started, I'd just like everyone to introduce themselves. I guess tell us what gender you are right now, what pronouns you use, and also if you're team waffle or team pancakes and why. Nick, if you want to go first.
Hey, so I'm Nick. I identify as genderqueer and I use she, they pronouns. And honestly, this might be the most controversial opinion of the day, but neither.
Oh,
I know.
Oh, I was not expecting that.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, I'm a very savory breakfast kind of person. So I hardly ever eat pancakes or waffles.
Interesting. Okay. Brenda, you're up next.
Hi, Brenda. Probably she, they, non-binary, I suppose. Still figuring all that out, even at this age. So yeah, and I would say pancakes, because they're like my dessert breakfast. So yeah.
Yeah, pancakes are my favorite too, to be honest. I'm definitely team pancake. Hey, Claire. So Ray, you're up next.
Well, hi guys, my name's Ray. I use they, them pronouns. I identify as non-binary, still figuring out what exactly that means to me. Honestly, sometimes I kind of lean towards agender, sometimes I'm kind of in between. Honestly, I don't even know at this point, but that's okay. And okay, we had this debate already, but I would definitely be a waffle person. I don't know. I remember talking to Rowan about this, but he likes to put like the syrup in the little holes on the waffle, and I think that's definitely the best way to go.
Okay. Mar.
Hi everyone, my name is Mar and I go by them, they. I identify as transgender queer. That's a really tough one because I do like both, but I'm gonna go with waffles because I love the waffle and chicken combo. Waffles. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah. Nadia? Wait, sorry, you're also...
I know, I'm self Nadia. It's actually Zoe. I don't know why it's come up with Nadia's name on my tile, but yeah, Zoe, she, they pronouns, trans woman, been queer all my life, but very much so now that I've come out. And I would say pancakes only because I know how to make them and I know how to make them fluffy. And like when I traveled around the world, I would just make, when I was couch surfing, I just make them for everybody. And everybody's so happy to have pancakes. So it's a little gift I could give them. Waffles, I can never be sure if they'll come out. So I like them. I have nothing against waffles, but probably a pancake.
Thank you for that, Rowan.
My name's Rowan. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a trans man or trans masculine. And I'm definitely team waffle, just because I feel like they're the example of like balance and versatility. both crunchy and fluffy, could be made easily both savory or sweet, more so than pancakes. And the tiny little pockets have endless possibilities.
Thank you, Rowan and Nadia.
Just like the other Nadia. I'd say pancakes for sure. I can't really make waffles that well, and pancakes are just, I guess, universal, just personal opinion. And I rarely eat either. But yeah, if I had to choose, I'd say pancakes.
I think Omar might have frozen.
Oh no.
Or he's just thinking really hard about
and staying
his
absolutely
answer.
still.
Yeah. And seeing how long it'll take us to say anything.
Omar really did
All the
say,
pancakes waffles dispute.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's just offended and has left, stormed
It's
out.
very controversial. It's a hot
Yeah.
topic. Oh,
He just left us.
we pushed it too far.
No.
we did.
So now it's a free for all.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Okay, there you go.
Yay.
Yeah, I am so sorry, guys. I think it's a bit glitching. I would just like say, Nadia, if you could step in just in case when my Wi-Fi glitches, that would be very much helpful. But in general, I think we could get started before my Wi-Fi glitches again, I guess. I just want to emphasize again, guys, please try to respond to each other and create dialogue with each other. But also, like, don't be afraid to talk about yourself as well. And if you ever feel anxious or nervous about something, feel free to private message me or Nadia about anything, and we'll try to help you out. And without further ado, the first question: how has your gender identity changed and evolved over time? The floor is open for anyone to answer.
I could start if everyone wants. I would just, for me, my journey was that, I very much thought that I was cisgender for a very long time of my life. But there were always things that kind of bothered me. There were little things that didn't quite sit right. And it wasn't until I first heard the term non-binary that I was liberated to then understand that I wasn't actually cisgender. But I'm a millennial, so I'm kind of in between. I guess I'm an old millennial, so I'm kind of in between different experiences. And I've had the experience of growing up like without the internet and then with the internet. So I've experienced that divide of like not having easy access to information or other communities, and then suddenly having that and have that really change the way that I was able to approach my own identity. Because when I was growing up, there was, transgender identities were not really talked about much. And when they were, it was extremely binary. And so for me, it was always like, well, I don't feel like a man. I do feel kind of boyish, but anyway, I'm sure you all get it. It's a little thing. But yeah, I was like, oh, I don't feel like a man. I don't feel like I'm necessarily in the wrong body. For me, it was always that I didn't like the way that people treated me when they were engaging with my gender. And so that's why I chose gender queer once I had access to all of this information, because it is a gender identity that is political in nature. And that's how I feel. It's like, I don't know how to say exactly what my gender is, but I know that when anyone puts gendered expectations on me, I hate them and they're very uncomfortable and they don't fit. And so that's just kind of where I'm at. And I'm like Ray. I've used non-binary, I use genderqueer now. I think I may be agender, but it's kind of like, what does any of that even mean? So I'm still kind of figuring it out, but for me, it's like less important now to have a label than it is to just give myself permission to not fit into any box and to be okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. If I could go off of you, I would say that my journey has been similar in the fact that like never really feeling, well, being brought up totally cisgender and the expectation of like my mom always wanted a girl. So when I was in the family, that was the expectation and everything put on that. But I never felt like that. And even growing up and now well on to in the midlife and everything, like trying to fit into that role, but not getting it. I just felt like I never got it, you know, and it was just like, I'm doing the things that everybody expects me to do, but I still don't get it. So yeah, it hasn't been until like last few years and stuff like that, just even with talking with kids and stuff like that, that I'm like, okay, I guess, I mean, I know that I'm not fitting in, but I guess there are words for it, which there weren't really truly words, you know, like growing up and all that. So I would just say, yeah, I never really had labels and don't really do labels, but so I'd probably say more like gender fluid, non-binary, not really feeling like either world of the binary, like somewhere in between. But yeah.
I could come in next. So yeah, speaking to what Brenda was just saying, likewise, I'm a Gen Xer, so I was born in the 70s, and things looked a lot brighter then. There were all the civil rights things still going on before the massive backlash of the 80s. But I was the firstborn, and again, I'm conservative parents had certain expectations of their firstborn, their son, and all this sort of thing, which I did not share. But I don't think I actually deeply interrogated gender, like probably not until I was a teenager. So like I was just growing up and I just knew that I was preferred the company of girls. I preferred the girls' way of speaking and interacting, girls' games to boys' games, which always seemed to have to do alpha dog dominance and all this sort of posturing and bullshit. And I never did click with that. But yeah, I think my parents were so preoccupied with chasing the American dream and whatever that means, that like, you know, they were taking extra work shifts and working 60, 70, 80 hours, and they weren't as interested in like engaging with me or my younger brother, who I ended up basically having to raise. So I guess in some ways, the some of my early formative gender identity has probably been reinforced by the fact that I was expected to do this sort of reproductive labor and emotional labor, like taking care of my younger brother, while my parents were out chasing the almighty dollar. Barely, I mean, they never were ever interested in like talking to either of us about, there was never like the birds and the bees. There was never a talk about any interest in our sexuality or gender, was just all assumed. And because my father's like a big guy in every way and very angry and violent ex-military, I definitely didn't feel comfortable discussing any of that with them. So yeah, and then obviously high school was like very fraught as well, with a bunch of people being, you know, there's a backlash due to AIDS and everything. And so yeah, it wasn't until college that I actually even started exploring the possibility. And so it's been a long journey, just getting to the point where I can feel safe enough to, well, although things are trending in the world at the moment, especially in the UK, making me a bit more fearful, but I still feel I made the right choice. So, but anyway, I've talked enough. But yeah, a similar situation of expectations from parents and not being able to really talk it through, or any interest in and their part in talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, I second everything that everyone has said. I also had my fair share of parent issues, and I still have them, being that I still live with my parents. I'm still in high school. So, but yeah, I mean, I personally didn't start exploring my own gender identity until like maybe the year before high school, like my freshman year really, and it all happened mostly because I had like two really good friends of mine who came out like the year before me and were like very brave about it and very open about it, and they kind of helped me like understand what my own whatever is going on inside me was. Like I, you know, was raised by parents who weren't necessarily trying to be harmful, but just automatically conform to, you know, the gender norms. And you know, they they wanted 2 girls and they didn't care if, I, wasn't that. And even my sister is like very, very, very gay. Like they got lucky with 2 gay kids. So, they are slowly becoming more open to it, thankfully. I came out to them last year, and although they did not get the pronouns thing at first, my mom's still on the they them is plural only track. But she uses them, so we're getting somewhere. My parents are both like older Gen Xers, so I mean, there's Gen Xers on the call, so don't want to be. I mean,
okay, it's all right.
it's just it's different because you were like raised in a different time, like you said, like you had the 80s with that kind of thing. Obviously, I wasn't alive back then, so I have no clue what happened. But all I know is from my history class with my teacher who also grew up in the 80s who likes to talk about it. But it was just really my own journey of like trying to understand my friends, like my friends who came out as non-binary also around the same time as me. And my mom had this phase where she thought I was only coming out as non-binary because my friends were doing it and I wanted to fit in with them, which no, please stop. But she had that phase. She's out of it now, thankfully. It was just me trying to figure out who I was outside of my friends and outside of my parents. And to be honest, I still haven't figured it out yet, but trying to. And I guess I'm still in high school. I got some time to do that. So yeah.
I guess I can go next. I would describe my journey as kind of slow. Growing up in a Hispanic family, was just taught that you're either gay or straight. So I never really took the time to explore. I just knew like I feel different. I remember my mom saying like I would cry when she would try to put dresses on me or anything feminine. And it wasn't until like my late 30s till I started like learning about the umbrella of gender identity and sexual identity, and it's not a either or. And so I'm finally able to discover being comfortable in my body, and it's also to like a second coming out, right? Because I was first thought, oh, just because I'm not feminine, and I'm into women, I must be a lesbian. And so kind of coming out to myself too, like, oh wait, actually I think I might be a little bit more trans or genderqueer versus just lesbian. And so it was kind of slow. And also I agree with everyone how like either culture, environment, and our upbringing do play a role on our journey. I know that there's some individuals that are lucky enough to know at the age of 5 that how I identify, and there's a range of early as 5 or late 30s, 40, 20s. So it's interesting to see the variety of the journeys that we all go through.
I can talk to my experience now. My journey was definitely easier than a lot of other ones I've heard of, and I'm grateful for that. I figured out sooner, and that my parents are like Portland hippies, so there's always that degree of internal stuff that you have sort of regardless of circumstance of like, am I faking it? What if I have to tell everybody that I was wrong? Like, being afraid to talk about it. But I just sort of remember like over puberty, I sort of got more and more like neutral to neutral masculine with the way I presented. And it didn't really click until in high school I joined theater, and every day I had to wear a dress and high heels for a rehearsal. And I just remember the singular moment of like looking in the mirror and going, oh no, that's not right. That's very wrong. That's not how it's supposed to look. And just that sort of like almost out of body experience of being like, not vibing. And I tried identifying as non-binary for a long time, but a lot of the things I like, because I very much so don't like binary things and conforming to stuff. But just over time, I happened to find that for me, all of the feminine things that like were really like you had like socially feminine were just things I'd been sort of conditioned into wanting to do and not really things of my own desire. And I was like, guess I'm just a dude. Like after I got rid of all the gunk, it ended up being a lot less complicated than I thought it was. I was like, oh, well, cool, I guess.
Cool story, bro.
Yeah.
And thank you for everyone for sharing your experiences. And I think like we can move on to the next question, which is how's your gender identity affected how you're treated in systems of government and healthcare?
Well, I'll come in because I think I'm the only one who's not in North America on this call. So I'm originally from Miami, but I've been living in the UK for over 20 years. And I don't want to slag off the NHS because it's not the fault of the people trying desperately to keep the system running while the government is trying to dismantle it and privatize it and sell it off to their rich mates. But it's pretty dire over here for if you're seeking to engage with healthcare or the government in general. The environment's grown very hostile, especially over the past few years. It looks like I foolishly chose exactly the wrong moment. It was like peak trans acceptance is when I came out. This is a terrible mistake. And like since then, like the tabloid press, the mainstream media, the government certainly has been trying to roll back transgender rights. And it's harder and harder to obtain healthcare. And I don't know if you're aware over there, but the system here is such that whilst for almost any important healthcare medical intervention, the guideline is 18 weeks to see a specialist. Like that is the absolute maximum you should have to wait to be like, if I had cancer and needed chemo, if I needed like a knee surgery, anything like that, I would have been seen pretty quickly within a couple months and probably have an appointment. But to get transgender healthcare, it's 3 to 5 years to be seen at your first appointment. So my experience is not great. I've been waiting. I literally just at the end of last year, managed to get my first appointment at a gender identity clinic. And this is after coming out in 2017. And yeah, I'm only just now on official hormones after having to DIY my hormones from abroad, from online pharmacies for years. And I still don't have access to several of the things that we're supposed to eventually have access to, like voice therapy. I'm still waiting. So it's a bit dire. I realize, obviously, coming from America, I do realize that the American healthcare system is a complete disaster as well. But yeah, I guess if you have healthcare, you can at least go into your doctor and say, self-refer and like probably get the thing moving within a few weeks or a month. Whereas over here, it's literally years. And I don't know how young people, I mean, I'm fairly resilient, but it's hard enough waiting years. I can't imagine people who are like facing oncoming puberty or people in college trying to get that control over that aspect of their lives and having the government, the healthcare system, everything say, no, you just have to wait, 3, 4, 5 years. It's all good. Don't worry about all the changes that are occurring. You'll be fine. And I don't know how some people aren't suicidal. So anyway, that's my experience. It's not been great, but I'm surviving. Over to someone else.
I can speak to trying to go through the system as a young person in America. Again, I'm very lucky that I do have full coverage from my mom's insurance. So the financial aspect of it isn't nearly as much of a concern as it would be for most people, where it's like, because everything's privatized over here, transgender care is borderline like viewed as like medical luxury. So they like as far as hiking up the prices for hormone therapy and stuff, if you don't have insurance, for a lot of individuals it can be like a choice between needs, which is super messed up. But for me, it is a lot of just they don't take you seriously, and you have to jump through a million hoops to get gender affirming care. Like my process was relatively streamlined because literally everything was all under the same house. You know, like it's all Kaiser. Like I went to the Kaiser Gender Pathway Clinic, and then I talked to my Kaiser physician, and then I went to the Kaiser pharmacy. And even through that, I like, as a young person, had to have like a board of people approve me going on like testosterone, and I had to talk to like a specific transgender like expert who of course was a cis woman. Like however, like yeah, it's like the equivalent of talking to like a ADHD specialist who's neurotypical. It's like, you don't know anything even if you've read a million books. It's like you've never existed in this body, so to take you as an expert is like an insult to me, because all of the people you deal with have infinitely more insight into what it is like to experience than you do. And then after I get like a bunch of people to check the yes box for me, which they could have just totally done no if I wasn't in such a, you know, liberal place, if I wasn't so privileged with where I've grown up, they could have just been like, no, you have to wait till you're older. We're not going to let you. And I just would have had to sit with that. And then it took me longer to get on testosterone than it did to legally change my name, and that process in itself was a bunch of million giant hoops to hop through, even with my parents fully being on board, me having the advice of a lawyer who does work for like a queer resource center that I go to sometimes. Like having a lawyer and my parents fully help me, it still took me like months. And you have to go to a courthouse and like have a judge say okay to you going by a new name. And the whole process is so like patriarchal. It's like I'm tired of asking for the man's approval to be myself. And I'm trying to get my tubes tied because not planning on those working anytime soon anyway. And it's like, good luck before you're 35. Like if you want to get a vasectomy, you can get that whenever, but because I have a female reproductive system, even though I'm never going to use that, I have to prove to the man, you know, I'm lucky I don't live in some states like Kansas where they have in the legality you have to get your husband's approval, which is like so many layers of patriarchal. Sheesh.
Yeah.
So it's been not as bad as it could have been, but just the fact that the system is this convoluted makes me want to turn into like a Kafka warrior and just be like, fuck the system.
Well, and I think it's really telling when you hear like a best case scenario and it's still a nightmare, you know?
Yeah.
It just shows how awful the whole like how violent the system is against us.
Yeah, and just following on from what you were saying, Rowan, yeah, it is heteropatriarchy that just assumes that, well, we have a right to a women's reproductive tract, and like basically there's this presumption that, well, one of your duties is to just, you know, turn out like people to put in the grist of the mill for capitalism and every other thing. It's like yeah, the dual standard is just always so shocking, and all this sort of legislation. It's like, yeah, no, we're not going to let you tie your tubes because we might want to force you to have babies at some point. Like, wow, this really sucks. So yeah.
Yeah, it's so, I'm just gonna touch on the name change thing and like how long that took for you. Like, oh my gosh, like my name is not legally Ray. I'm just gonna say that now. And it will not be until I'm 18 and can get the money for that because my parents will not allow that. But like I, you know, looked into the whole process myself when I decided that, you know, I wanted to go by a different name. And you literally have to announce it in the friggin' newspaper. Like you have to put an announcement that you are changing your name, and anybody can like come and like oppose it, and then they'll just deny, like they can just deny your request because somebody says, oh, I don't want them to go by that name. Like, oh, Like any literally random like white dude can come in and say, hi, yeah, I don't think you should go by Ray. So yeah, you're just gonna have to be gender name the rest of your life. Okay, thanks, bye. So it's, oh my God, it's so fucking horrible. And it's also expensive. Like in New Jersey, it's $250 just to file the paperwork. Like not even to go to court and like do that stuff. It's just to file the fucking paperwork to the clerk. Like you have to fill out all this paperwork that states that, and you have to like go, you have to, and your parents have to appear in court with you also. Like you, if you are under 18, your parents have to appear in court with you. Obviously, you know, you need your parents' permission to do anything in the world, which is another debate for another time. But like you need to have consent from like your parent or guardian, and you need to go before a judge in this court where anybody can attend and watch you be interrogated by a judge because you want to go by a name that fits you. Like it's so fucked. And another thing is changing your gender markers on your either on your birth certificate or like on anything else. Yeah, it's like New Jersey. I mean, I think New Jerseyans and the people who live in like Oregon and stuff. I don't know what it's like in the UK, but I know in these states, like at least the more progressive states, they in New Jersey at least they have like an X gender marker, like you can get that. So you know, I'm gonna obviously try to get that when I'm 18, but like there are a lot of states that don't have that. But even that, I haven't looked too deeply into that process, but I'm pretty sure that costs money as well, and you have to like present them your birth certificate and like get it like amended in a court and stuff, and like just general crap like that. And if you don't have your name legally changed, another thing, I'm sorry, this is a long tangent, but if when you go to school, you cannot have your name changed in the school system without having it be legally changed. So every year when I go to new classes, the teachers will go down their attendance chart and call out all the students' name, and it'll just be dead name, dead name, dead name, and I can't ever like. And sometimes I try to email the teachers beforehand because I really don't want to go through that shit. But sometimes they'll just either they won't see the email, like they don't check their emails, or they just won't care, and they'll just dead name me, and I have to be like, well, I actually go by this, and I go to school in a very conservative area, so I usually try to pass off as like a nickname or something, and not like, hi, I'm trans. Although look at me, I'm obviously not straight. Like it's, oh my God. It's so bad, and it's just ridiculous how many hoops you have to jump through to do anything for yourself in this fucking country.
Just Mar, you want to say something?
Oh yeah, no, I was just agreeing that yeah, there's a lot of struggles, but I'm also glad to see that even though it's not perfect yet, that there's a lot of at least like in near California, a lot of resources. Like you know, there's like a few clinic that I worked at that did provide a lot of like help to like get like you know legal to change your name legally, to get you know low cost or healthcare for like surgeries and things like that. But yeah, we definitely do have a lot of work ahead of us to improve healthcare for us. Absolutely.
Yeah, hi, Michelle. Would you like to add on to the conversation? And
Yeah,
also introduce yourself as well?
yeah. I'm sorry for being late.
It's okay.
I fell asleep, and so anyway, this is my screw up, and then couldn't find the link. I am Michelle Risher. I will be 68 years old come September. I have known since the early 50s, or since I can remember back in the late 50s, that I did not fit in. When I was having my, I was born in Mobile, Alabama, and when I was having my first communion, anyway, I went to a parochial school the first 2 grades, and they were going around the class, and the nun was asking students when all the first graders, do you want to be a mommy or a daddy when you grow up, according to the the gender. And she came to me and asked it. My mother has always remembered this and kept reminding me because the nuns called her and told her they thought it was cute. And I said, oh no, I don't want to be a daddy, you know, and I went in this thing. And of course, nobody back then knew it. I was 16 years old. It was 1969 when David Rubin's terrible book, What You Ever Want to Know About Sex and We're Afraid to Ask, came out. And it was then that I first heard the term transsexual, a term that I knew and identified with and didn't really know any different until I moved to Houston, Texas in 97. So anyway, back then there was then the Christine Jorgensen story came out. Friends of mine saw it in a drive-in about a year later. Anyway, I have known it's been a path. And before I go any further, I am a member of the Democratic National Committee. I was elected last December. Prior to that, I was the female vice chair of the Democratic Party of Oregon and chair of its Stonewall Caucus. There have been two trans people, both from Oregon. We are the only two ever to be elected to the Democratic National Committee. Laura Calvo was from 2012 to 2016. And I was elected recently. I am the only one, though, to have ever been elected as the sole female representative for their state Democratic Party. So, and I was the first trans person to be elected a first, second, or senior vice chair of a party. So it's, and that fits in somewhere later, especially when you have gone back. I have written 3 resolutions that were passed by the Democratic Party of Oregon. The first, which is regarding transgender health care, which is a call for the legislators in the state of Oregon to enact a policy providing full, comprehensive medical, social, hormonal, surgical therapies, making it a must that anybody providing insurance or serving as an agent of an insurer in Oregon has to pass these. The big problem has been every time I go to the legislators, they say it's too much money. Nevertheless, I'm not going to stop. And now that I'm on the DNC, I'm going to push that issue nationally. I've written 2 others. One was regarding faith-based discrimination against the LGBTQ plus community. And the latter one was regarding the disenfranchisement and eradication of transgender, intersex, and non-binary people. Both of the latter 2 were picked up and passed by the Democratic National Committee at their summer conventions. And those are things I'm hoping to be that are also on my agenda to push. So when I grew up, there was no access. I came out to my first wife in 1981. I came out to my family by 85. 86, I left a job, moved to Tucson, Arizona, because I had found a therapist there that did trans. At that time, there was no internet. There was no there wasn't even an electronic bulletin board. So the only source I found was a group called Janus Foundation out of San Juan Capistrano in California. And I sent off and had to send money for return postage. They were a nonprofit, and they sent me back a thick envelope, a big like 8.5 by manila envelope, anyway, full of papers and different things and little brochures. And it was there that I found a therapist. So I quit. I moved out to Tucson. I began therapy. They were still doing the real life test. So you had to spend a year living and working in your gender. And it was very, I mean, basically that was back when you had to wear skirts, you had to wear lipstick, it was just an absurdity. And if you said you were not if you had to say basically that you liked men for them even to consider it. You couldn't be. I identify, I'm married to a woman. I identify as a lesbian now. I'm as far as that goes, but you couldn't have done it. As with most trans people, it's a long path. Sometimes to get there, it stops and starts. So I finally, after all that, in 2012, was able to, I have my name and gender marker legally changed. In Texas, I had to go to Phyllis Fry, who was the second out transgender judge in the nation, and have it changed. I mean, I was never as happy or proud. I went right down. I got my driver's license and social security changed, and then I went to Thailand in September that year. It'll be 9 years, and I had the surgery that I had always wanted, and then I went back a year later, or 2 years later, and had some facial surgery performed. So it's a long, rough path for all those who were trans. In between, I went through what they call nervous breakdowns. I went through 2 episodes of severe major depression. The last one at age 55 cost me everything, and I mean literally everything. And you wonder where you're going to go. But the thing is, I came out of this never thinking I would. I got re-involved in politics with the Houston GLBT political caucus. I served as the screening chair for Harris County in the city of Houston, which have more people than the state of Oregon for candidates running for any office. And I have somehow, against whatever, and it's not because I'm so great. It is just, it is proof that one can recover and go on. And once you're aware, you know you belong, when your gender is satisfied, when you have no questions, then it makes life one hell of a lot easier. And that's what I'm hoping I can help bring to younger trans and non-binary people. And yes, in Oregon, I'm very proud. I wrote the methodology for handling non-binary people in the Democratic Party elections. A year later, and I wasn't in touch with them, the Democratic National Committee published essentially the same set of rules. And now we have it, the Democratic Party of Oregon. You can run as male, you can run as female, you can run as non-binary. And we are open to it. And actually, I keep trying to preach and tell people this is the best time, especially for non-binary folk, to get involved in politics, in Democratic Party politics, especially here in Oregon. So anyway, in a nutshell, because I can go on forever, trust me. So anyway, that's it, and that's who I am. And I've been listening to what you all have to say, and my heart goes out to you, and I truly understand. And I hate the saying, I don't hate it, but I tend to be a skeptic, but it does get better. It really can get better. And that's what I am trying to do, is see that none of us get pushed back into the closet, because I think you can guess by now, I don't give up without a fight. I'm an ex-Teamsters rep during the Reagan years in the Deep South. So I'm not afraid to swim upstream. And I'm hoping to learn from y'all what people need, how I can best facilitate it. And I'll put my name or my phone number in that email in the chat box for you. But please, if I can help you, if you need to talk, if you want anything, reach out to me. I represent this community specifically, and I have a great ally. She wasn't elected. She is a chair's appointee to the Democratic National Committee, named Marissa Richmond, who is a trans woman of color in Nashville, Tennessee. So, and she and I are working a lot of things. So anyway, I'm going to shut the hell up and let you all talk for a while. Thank you, Omar.
Thank you so much for all that information. Like, genuinely really appreciate everything you just said right now. But I do think we have to move on to the next question in order to get through everything before time ends. And the next question is, what are some social experiences you've had that cisgender people would not have experienced? And if Brenda and Mark could answer first, and then the floor is open for everyone else to respond.
I guess I'll go first. One of the things for me is just safety. Little things such as like going to public restrooms and having that anxiety. I've had experiences of a cisgender woman kind of giving me a second look. Particularly one experience where one made a comment of, "Oh, this is a woman's restroom," and just made me very self-conscious. And yeah, I guess the main thing for me is just safety, whether it's using the restroom, career opportunities, having to worry about acceptance in the workplace and career. It's one of like the main things I've experienced in terms of my gender identity versus something that a cisgender person might have not experienced in the past.
Sorry, could you elaborate a bit more on what you mean of your experience with your career?
Yeah, so I'm a licensed marriage family therapist. So, always had the fear of like, uh, and it actually, I think it was last month, it actually happened. I had an individual who, once they realized I'm trans, didn't want to work with me, which was a little bit, it was the first time that happened, but that was always kind of my fear, kind of like, so as we talked about, it does take a while in terms of healthcare and getting surgeries and stuff like that. So I've always had that fear of like, am I going to lose clients once they start seeing that transition? That was like anxiety that I've been experiencing in that sense of acceptance.
Yeah, I can definitely understand the public restrooms, even though I can pass. Well, previously, definitely I could pass as definitely a cis female, but as I've aged and gone on, I've definitely embraced my more masculine side, which is definitely more comfortable for me. And then sometimes when I'm totally in my, like my baseball caps and everything else and baggy stuffs, go into a public restroom and totally get side eyes and second glances and all that. So yeah, I have that sometimes when I'm just like, let me just go in real quick, get out and all that. So I mean, just for me, I can imagine anybody else that's in unsafe environments to have to experience that. Yeah, I was also going to just mention, and also like for work, I've had the privilege of being like a stay-at-home parent. So I've had a bubble kind of for me of like not having to deal with people really, at least in the work environment and stuff, and which has been kind of nice. But also then I've also had to deal with like school moms, which for me is totally uncomfortable in that environment too, which I'm like, well, I don't fit in there. So that's just you do what you can, don't. Yeah.
Thank you, Brenda Moore. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to respond to anything more Brenda said, or have their own experiences that they'd like to share?
I guess I could come in. It kind of depends on what you like. I've got like ones at both ends of the spectrum, like really positive experiences and then really dire ones. I don't want to bring the tone down, just people have a preference. Since I don't want to monopolize the time, I'll just pick one story. Do you want something upbeat or something that is a bit about like upbeat?
I would like positive. Yeah,
Okay.
I
No one
would
else is
enjoy a
voting, so I'll
positive
go with
state.
that. So yeah, I think an experience that people who aren't trans probably will never get to have is like do a having someone basically not recognize you from the person you were before, like completely not clock that you're the same person, and that not be in a negative way. I mean, I've also had negative experiences along these lines. We can avoid those. But yeah, I literally, a few years before I started my transition, which was back in 2017, I was doing a PhD, and it was a close-knit research group. And so all the PhD students, we hung out together. Most of them were younger than me. I'm kind of like going back to education after a long time. And all the professors, we'd have like biscuits and tea one day of the week towards the end and ask how was everyone's weekends plans and stuff like this. So one of these professors who had literally spoken with me for like an hour, at least an hour a week for 4 years over the course of my PhD, knew me very well, came to the kind of Viva celebration for another student. And this was the first year of my transition. So I'd gone off, I'd told my friends and some of the PhD students, but I hadn't emailed like all of my old professors. Like there are people I just didn't feel immediately like I wanted to tell, especially since I thought I was just getting started with my transition. So he didn't know. And he turned up to help this other student celebrate. And she and I were standing there just having a nice little conversation. She was like, I'm so glad you came. I know you probably feel nervous, don't. Everybody's cool. And like, I'm really, really happy. I'm really, because it was like, for me, this must have been within the first 3 to 6 months of me coming out socially. So actually, you know, not just kind of still transitioning. And like he came in late, like just before we were about to be seated for the meal. And he walks right up and he congratulates her and he turns to me. And this is a person who, like I said, has known me for 4 years, spoken with me every week for hours, and like goes, "Oh, hi, I'm Matt." And I'm just like, I kind of look at her and she looks at me and she's like basically the look was, oh my God, he really doesn't recognize you. It's like the main difference, like literally was a little bit of makeup and my hair wasn't tied back in a ponytail. It's like, and so we just kind of smiled at one another and she's like kind of stepped in and said, so Matt, this is Zoe. And like he goes, oh, hi, a pleasure to meet you. I work with Ree. And I'm like, and all I could think of to say, I was completely flabbergasted. All I could think to say was like, yeah, I know. It's like it's like, and like I didn't want to like, I thought it'd be awkward of me. I felt bad, like, oh my God, I don't want to like correct him and say, don't I look a bit familiar? Because I didn't want to. So like for the rest of the evening, like we had our meal and their drinks and everything, I was like floating off on a cloud. I'm like going, that is like the best passing experience I've ever had. Because obviously my physique, you know, my height, my broad shoulders, my jawline, all of it does not exactly scream natal female. So like I don't expect people to correctly perceive my gender. I try and give them a lot of clues, but it doesn't always work. And just for him to like totally, this is a person who knew me and like somehow is like re-experiencing me, like rediscovering me in my new gender. So that's quite a nice story. So I thought I'd share. That's like my favorite anecdote. I've never had quite as nice time as I had that night. I'm like going, wow, maybe this is going to work. Because like I said, this is really early on. This is like 3 years ago. So anyway, I'll shut up now.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
hilarious. This is a very weird story. I am sorry in advance. And this actually happened like literally last week. So very fresh in my brain. But I work at a summer camp. I'm a camp counselor. And so we were like literally in the bathroom with these kids, taking them to the bathroom. And all of a sudden my head counselor comes up to me and she's like, hey Ray, I have this really awkward question to ask you. I hope you don't mind. And I'm like, I'm getting nervous at this point. I'm like, what does she want from me? Am I in trouble or something? Did I do something wrong? Did I fuck up? I was like sweating. And she's like, and she takes me aside and she's like, do you have different preferred pronouns? And I'm like, slam hand on table. Well, like, okay, I work at a YMCA camp in Hunterdon County, and if you don't know where that is, it is literally the most conservative place you'll ever find in New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey itself is progressive, but like in New Jersey, it's like, it's not like Texas level conservative, but you know, it's pretty conservative. And I could not get a read on this person for the longest time. And so the fact that she just can't, came up to me and like asked my pronouns, because like I like just recently this year started going by Ray at the summer camp. I went by my dead name last year, and it was a very awkward experience, like trying to go by a new name, because I was like so scared coming in that the kids would remember my name from last year and just start screaming it out, because they're 5-year-olds and what else are they gonna do? Although most of them have very bad memories, so most of them forgot. So it was like, do you remember me? No. Well, thanks. But so it's generally okay, but it was just this weird, awkward experience. At the same time, we were standing in the girls' bathroom, so it's like, I mean, it's nice that you're gonna refer, like you're asking me my pronouns, but also I'm still standing in the girls' bathroom. So I mean, obviously some changes have to be made. The fact that there's no gender neutral bathroom at this summer camp, that's a little iffy, but it's not in her control. But like, it is what it is. It was a small accomplishment. So yeah, that's my strange story for y'all.
Definitely along the lines of interacting with people like that knew you before coming out. It's definitely a weird experience when like it hasn't happened to me since the beard, but like having straight guys hit on me has been a thing that cisgender people don't really have to deal with, which comes to mind for me, which is always like, hey buddy, rather you need to change your labels, or this interaction, I think that, see, this isn't working. It's always interesting to go about explaining to someone who's like trying to be complimentary and is interested in you. It's like, oh, see, this right now, the way this is happening is still an insult, but that's not what you meant, but that is how it's getting received. So like, and especially because people get so sensitive with romantic and whatever else feelings, that it's like you constantly have to like almost coddle them to not have them get aggro at you for something that you've been open about for like a year. It's like, no, buddy, sorry, you're gonna have to keep walking. It's not gonna work.
Oh, I love that. I would say, for me, I think what I experienced that I don't know if cisgender people would understand or experience is just how fraught and how energy draining it can be to like put on a shirt and then be like, I don't feel like this is affirming my gender, but I don't know what I want to wear today. Or there's just so much. And I think especially, I think it applies when you maybe identify or present in a quote unquote binary way, but especially when you kind of are fluid and don't really have like a set aesthetic and things can kind of shift from day to day. It's just, I don't know if cisgender people like who have an aesthetic and just feel very comfortable in that and feel very like set with who they are can understand how like exhausting and vulnerable it can be to be like, oh my God, like when I live stream, sometimes, I don't really wear makeup and I, wear just like a plain t-shirt or something. And it's like, it's not a big deal, but then it is kind of a big deal because the responses I get from people are different. I'm treated differently depending on my aesthetic. And so that's something I didn't understand when I was quote unquote cisgender and had sort of a set aesthetic, is just how much like labor and energy goes into that constant exploration, and then your constant like monitoring of how other people are perceiving you and how you feel about it. And I think Rowan, like you said before too, just like how much time you spend in your head being like, is this even real? Am I faking it? Is this like my real identity? So that's something to me that I feel like I've discovered in my journey. And then I would just end with saying, though, at the same time, having this experience of being like quote unquote cisgender most of my life, I would also say that like the barrier is so much thinner than we think. Like everyone's like a short haircut away from experiencing transphobia. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so thin. So I really would love for cisgender people to not see us as so separate from them, but to see us all being oppressed on like a sliding scale or whatever. You know, it's like, yeah, you have privilege until the day that you want to do something with your body that isn't acceptable, and then you don't have privilege anymore. So it's like that easily lost. Because that has also been my experience of like, wow, like I was so close the whole time, and there were so many things in my life I can look back on and now see that that was my gender asserting itself. And I thought I had the cis privilege, but I was still being oppressed, you know, because I couldn't do what I wanted to do comfortably with my body.
Yeah, no, thank you for that a lot. Really got me thinking about it now. But on to the last question. How have you learned to navigate life with your gender identity? If Michelle could answer first, and then the floor is open to everyone else to respond or give their own answer, that would be nice. This is the last question, so if you want to get a little bit more out, that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Omar. It is, especially coming from a time where I did, where for years, even in 2000s, I would say I was trans, and people would go, "Oh, you like to wear women's clothes," and it's like, no, 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 no. That's a cross dresser. That's a different thing, and you have to explain it. A lot of people um, uh, uh, are more open to it than one would think. And at first, I still feel conspicuous. I mean, I have shrunk a little, I think, but I was 5'11". I lettered in track, football, and wrestling in high school. I was asked out by a guy who later coached the U.S. and then the Canadian Olympic teams for wrestling at Ohio State, at the Ohio State University, as they would say. And so and nobody would have ever guessed, because I learned to keep my identity such a secret. You manifest personality, and so the initial transitions are difficult, especially depending where you live. I'm fortunate to live in Portland. It's a lot easier, but a lot of it is gaining confidence and coming to peace with yourself. I've found out. So once you get and you are where you want to be, and you are becoming who you are and were meant to be, don't apologize to anybody for it. Do not walk into a room, a bathroom, or anything else. Frankly, when it comes to the bathroom issues, my favorite statement is, I have more to fear from other people in the bathroom than they have to fear from me. And I know that is, I think, very common. And none of us, I think some people have certain notions about female bathrooms being coffee clutches or something like that. That's not really the case. I mean, there are those occasional times where you will speak to a friend while you're washing your hands, but a bathroom is for a certain bit of business. You go in, you do your business, you come out. That is it. And I've always found out, if you do it, and if you don't act, I've traveled a bit internationally, and my biggest fear after the surgery, and I had to fly through Russia, Moscow on the way there and back, was the customs in Houston, Texas. That or the people at the gate questioning. I think you just have to take who you are and become who you are and build with it and move on and not let things get hung up. And don't worry about the people that don't get it. Some of them will. I have friends from all walks, and I know some, especially older, aren't as necessarily comfortable. What I found out surprisingly is a lot of people anymore accept me as I am. And that's despite the fact I had voice lessons. And great. I was the second person in University of Houston to speech pathology. group where they teach you how to develop a more gender specific voice. But you know, by that time I'd already been me for 60 years essentially, and I just found it easier to speak in my normal voice. But that's independent, and that is absolutely personal. And I found most people have come to accept me, and they don't question it. I think we have to get by being, and of course you have to worry about your safety, but we have to become comfortable in our personalities and not be in the least bit apologetic or be perceived as being weak or vulnerable. Because you're right. I mean, I have to honestly say there are times I understand just how vulnerable we are in that regard, but there's a lot of good people and a lot of people who are more understanding and accepting. And by and large, nobody has ever really, for whatever reason, chose to challenge me. But it's a presence, and I think that's where we are. And I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but I hope it does.
Yeah, if I can come in and basically just to echo what Michelle was saying, I've only been out for about 4.5 years now on my transition. And it's exactly what you were saying in the sense that when I started, I was, it's all the doubts like that Rowan was sensing and everybody's pointing out. That's like, you wonder, like, am I trans enough? Am I going to be perceived? Am I doing all the right things? You have not doubts so much about your gender identity. You may still be questioning and exploring that, but doubts about the way others are going to interact with your gender. And if you go out there, like, worrying constantly about it, second guessing yourself and your wardrobe and your voice and everything. I still do because I'm not happy with any of it. But you have to exude confidence, and it's much easier said than done. It's easier for me to say that nowadays when I go out, I don't let people gaslight me into doubting my gender identity. It doesn't matter what people think or what they believe about me or whatever preconceptions they may have. If I go out there and I'm confident and I don't let them try to make me doubt myself, that I know who I am and I'm right in feeling this way. There's nothing wrong with me being me. Then even if someone gives me the evil eye or scowls at me, or I've had verbal abuse shouted at me from cars. So people are so courageous. But generally what I do is like, I don't get as much of that anymore, simply because you kind of create a reality bubble around you by your confidence in yourself, your knowledge about yourself. And so people who might like 3 years ago have like done a double take and like kind of looked at me and been suspicious because I wasn't confident. Then they're saying they're picking up on that and they're thinking, if I come in confident, I usually get smiles, a friendly greeting. Some people make small talk, and like the people who are still prejudiced and bigoted, who still hate people like us, they're no longer courageous enough to hurl the abuse or to take action. You put them on a back foot. Basically, they're like, how can she be so confident? She seems so. I don't like this, but like, and literally, if I see someone who scowls at me and I return like, I give them a smile and like, just, how are you? Have you nice day, nice weather we're having? They do not know what to do. They will actually avert their eyes, like people are who would normally have attacked me. I mean, verbally, not physically. So yeah, I think it's really good life advice for coping in this world, at least until culture catches up with all the spectrum of gender and sexuality, that you just have to be yourself and not let anyone change your mind about it, and that will force others to, like, not everybody, but a lot of people who will just accept you and stop acting. They will actually treat you as you feel yourself. So anyway, I'm going to shut up, but that was mainly, yeah, just supporting what you were saying.
That was really good advice. And I think two more people could either respond to what Michelle and Zoe said or answer the question again. The question is in the chat box just in case. So if a couple more people want to answer, go ahead.
I, a bit of double echoing here. I do agree that confidence is a huge thing. I mean, I think just in general in life, as well as with gender identity, if you sort of assert something as true, or sort of hold an air of confidence, people are much less likely to challenge you than if there's question to it. You know, often people think they can tell whether or not you are planning something or lying, but you can't really tell those kinds of things. The only things you can tell is comfort or discomfort. So if you send people the signal like, I'm comfortable and I'm setting the rules, most of the time people will just go, okay, I'm comfortable, I'm following then. So you can like just believing you can get you like really far as just stuff that you can do if you walk into the room with confidence. You know, it's not a be all end all, but people are much more susceptible to they're much more directable than we think, you know. And if you're just like, I'm here, this is me, and I'm taking up this space, even if they don't like you, just like putting your foot down that hard oftentimes can earn you a level of respect from people who are like, I don't like you, but I'm still gonna shake your hand because you're being assertive. And, you know, weirdly with my gender identity and being masculine, you think that like dude broing it up would sort of make people more comfortable with me. And that definitely is the case sometimes, but I found a lot more often that slipping into the gay man voice really pacifies people. And I'm not quite sure why, but it really does. If I'm like, oh no, honey, no, here, let's rework this. Let's talk about it a different way. I can see, listen, right now we're at like a B level. We can get to an A plus. Everybody loves the gay man voice. I don't know why, but they do. I think it's part of the monkey brain. I think it's got to go way back.
Back to the gay little monkeys who started it all. I think, yeah, just to kind of add into what everyone's saying, I just think like the system wants us to hate ourselves, right? And the system wants us to die. It wants us to conform or to go away. So I do think like as much as we can love ourselves and as much as we can understand that like a body in transition is beautiful and it is its own aesthetic. Like I really find trans people beautiful in every phase. And I think there's so much like imposed self-hatred of not being at the end or not passing or whatever. And I see like some seeds of that being really pushed back on, and, you know, people being able to like live in their gender however that appears. And being okay with that. And I just think that is the work, you know, that we need to do for ourselves and for each other. I think like in community with each other, like we need to be loving each other and dating each other and treating each other with respect and like uplifting each other and not replicating these harmful heteropatriarchal kind of behaviors. And then just on a personal level for me, I've experienced a lot of liberation in the last few months with just being like, I'm just going to show up however I want to show up and not really worry about what aesthetic I have that day or what my gender is that day. I just, you know, and I feel that my autism has come so fully integrated into my gender identity that like for me, part of my gender expression is wearing comfortable clothes that feel comfortable in my sensitive skin. You know, it's become a lot deeper to me than that like external performance, and just realizing like I don't want to expend all this energy on this. I just want to put on a sweatshirt and like go on with my day. And that's been like very liberating for me. It's like I like having short hair. I'd love to get my boobs chopped off at some point if I can afford it, but like, you know, day to day I'm just gonna dress how I'm gonna dress and not really worry about it too much. And that's been really, really liberating.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that so much. I'm like, I have been thinking a lot recently about the link between autism and your gender identity and how many autistic people are like, you know, identify beyond the gender binary. I myself am questioning some stuff regarding both gender and autism. I, you know, my God, brain cells. I have been working towards like getting evaluated for autism for literally a year now, because American healthcare system, everybody knows. But like I think the fact is like that like I forget, it's like 6 times more autistic people are queer, or just generally like identify beyond the gender binary. I think that comes into play how like autistic brains work. Like autistic people see the world differently. I totally relate to the thing about the comfortable clothes. Like my other non-binary friends will like wear the craziest outfits, and I'll just show up to school in like sweatpants and a t-shirt because I cannot deal with that shit. Like I'll just show up with like, yeah, like honestly, a sweatshirt is the best thing ever. Like what's more gender neutral than a sweatshirt? Like also another thing is like perceiving your gender presentation and your gender identity, like people judging non-binary people because of how androgynous they look. Like if for some reason I wanted to be more feminine on like one day, like one time I wanted to experiment with makeup and stuff. I've never worn makeup in my life. It's a very new world for me. But my sister's really into it, and she's like, can I put makeup on you? I'm like, you know what, sure. And then people were automatically like, wait, does that mean you're still non-binary? And I'm like, bruh, it's just some makeup. Like, what does that have to do with anything? Like, what I wear does not determine my gender identity. And it's so weird that people make that connection. It's like, hi, no. But like all these things are just really interconnected. And I'm sorry, I got off topic there. But I just, I wanted to talk about that because as somebody who's questioned both my brain workings and my gender identity and all of that stuff, it's definitely interconnected. Autistic brains. I don't know much about this, but I've heard a term being thrown around a lot recently called gender, and I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that yet because I think the common misconception is that it's like an autistic gender, but it's like it's more so like how your gender is changing because you're autistic. Like neurotypical people have a very fixed notion of what gender should be. And I mean, well, I guess that's just a general misconception, but like autistic people generally will see that stuff differently, and like neurodivergent people in general. Neuroqueer, yeah, I've never heard that one, but I think that would describe it as well. Like we're just experiencing our gender differently than neurotypical people. I personally I know I'm neurodivergent, not sure if I'm autistic yet, but figuring it out. But it's definitely really interconnected, and there's a lot of new phrases and labels being thrown around regarding that. And I'm not sure what one I would use, but I know that the way your brain works definitely does have an effect on your gender identity and how you perceive it.
Yes, thanks so much for sharing. I do appreciate what you guys said. Rowan, please go ahead, but we need to move on to closing statements right after you.
Perfect.
Wait, actually, can Rowan do that like after closing statement? Because we could always stay on after the call anyways. Sorry to cut you off. It's just 5:30, that's why.
Would anyone like to begin the closing statements?
What I wanted
Sorry,
to
no,
say
we
was
couldn't.
pretty much closing, actually.
Oh, great. Then go ahead. Yeah.
Just sort of circling back to trying to exist to meet that endpoint or whatever. We never do really hit that endpoint with gender, and that's just that's just textbook capitalism worming its way into our brains. We don't exist for success. We exist for existence, and existence is resistance. So just keep existing for today and keep resisting in the way that is most like fucking rad for you. Because that is truly like the best way that you can be you, is just to do it and feel good and not apologize for it.
Omar, may I add one thing? What I want to say about it, I got involved with politics through the caucus in Houston, and I found a very welcoming and accepting environment. When we moved to Oregon, there was no such group like that here, but I became involved. I'm a lifelong radical Democrat, and I got involved here, and I found acceptance. I found a chance to grow and to thrive, and that helped develop my comfort level. And we have a lot of people who are trans and non-binary who are running for public office, but I find the real sexy part in the real meat of the issue in the interpersonal politics that I deal with in the Democratic Party here. And I'm hoping, because we need to express ourselves as a bloc and a vote. And I'm hoping that I have raised the bar on what trans people can do in party politics. I'm still waiting for a trans chair, for another trans DNC member, for more trans. San Francisco has a non-binary Democratic Party chair. So get involved in it. It is a great thing. It is good for all of us. And yes, you run into some asshats, if I can use that expression, in politics, but there's a lot of good people, and get in there and make them and show them why they need to change. And you'll find out they're going to help you. And that's it.
That was really good. Mar, would you like to go next?
Yeah, just agree with everyone in terms of not giving into fear and kind of learning to be okay in your skin and who you are. And it's like one of the main things that I learned from these talks.
I definitely agree with that. Zoe?
Sorry, was that me? You're very quiet.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I would just to concur with what other people are saying, like, don't give into the despair. I know that the way the world has been going recently, we're taking this hard turn to the far right in so many countries, and it's very worrying. All of us who have a brain can see like the paths of history that history has trodden, that we might be going down ourselves, but we can't we can't let it destroy our hope, because that's unfortunately what heteropatriarchy and capitalism wants us to do. They want us to give up and just go along with whatever the people who think that they're in charge of the world are going to do to it. So yeah, especially for trans people, queer people in general, and all marginalized groups, we just have to keep living our best life, keep supporting one another, and keep just like resisting them, kind of in the way Rowan was saying, by just being our best selves and fuck these people. I mean, we may not succeed, but we're going to go out with the fight, which is not what they want, but fuck them. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting very rude at the end of the talk.
No, you're good.
Yes, don't apologize. Bring the rude energy. They need it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be my closing statement, is just be
Sorry,
fucking rude. You know, say what you want to say it out. You know, and I think for me, I'm a gender abolitionist. I'm like, let's get to the point where this is all aesthetics in play, and like we don't have to be political just to like exist in our fucking bodies.
That was deep. I love it. Brenda?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's said the great things that need to be said, and of just be yourself, basically. And I'm just I love the generation coming up that they're already, you know, you guys are already like, yes, this is me, take it. And I love that. Just because you don't have to like wait until this age to figure it out and be like, oh yeah, by the way, you know. So it's excellent to see. And I think that yeah, as soon as we can get rid of all these boxes and just say no, like more people are probably on this spectrum, gender spectrum, than not, is we'll be in better places for it.
Ray, would you like to?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, honestly, what Zoe said, like, fuck, ever, like, just curse. Oh my god, I hate. Oh my god, tone policers. I want to drive them off the edge of the fucking planet. Like, I am so sick of people telling me to stop speaking up for my own damn existence. Like, I am so done with it. Like, do not like do not stop speaking up no matter what people say. Obviously, if you're not in like a safe space to do so, then don't put yourself at harm's way. But like, otherwise, be unapologetic, keep pushing forward. Like, you know, we are unfortunately in a very scary time right now. There's a lot of bad shit going on everywhere, but I do have hope that we can move past this and that we can, you know, actually get some fucking equality and acceptance in this world someday. You know, there's legislation that exists that's being advocated for by some pretty amazing organizations. I recently took part in a lobby day for a youth-led group called Generation Ratify that's advocating for a bunch of legislation, particularly in the United States. There's the Equality Act, and then there's other ones. There's a one specifically about ensuring trans rights, although I forget what it's actually called. But there's like some fancy name for it. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, but there's always stuff to do to help. So like, don't stay silent. Always be looking for more ways that you can help, and, you know, keep speaking up.
Thank you, Ray, for saying that. That was beautiful. Omar, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I could say some closing statements. As a cis man, I learned a lot in this conversation. I have newfound admiration and respect for all people questioning their gender and going through these oppressive systems that socialize people to conform to the gender they're born in. Yeah, I learned a lot, and also was really happy to hear Zoe's story about how she passed. It really made me feel good, and Ray as well. That was a weird story. You're right, it was a weird story, but it's also very cute. And yeah, no, I'm just really thankful that everyone was sharing their experiences, navigating their life. And I think it got me questioning a lot of things, like just like I said, like as a cis man, seeing what systems I benefit from and seeing how I could help other people with their own identity problems as well. It was a really nice talk, and again, thank you everyone for sharing what you think. And Nadia, I guess you're the last one.
Yes, I mean, honestly, what Omar said, I feel really grateful. And honestly, today was a really hard day for me. A lot happened. I was really stressed out, but after this conversation, I feel very hopeful. And hope is honestly the best feeling in the world. Hope and love. So I feel really happy. Thank you guys so much for making me feel this way. And I hope you guys feel this way too. So thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing to be around everyone else and hear everyone's stories and have different generations of people to talk about this with. So thanks everyone for being here and being in community with us.